I'm Noel Latif, president of the Foreign Policy Association, and I am delighted to welcome you this evening to the second annual IDP Foundation Irene Pritzker Distinguished Lecture on Economic and Social Development. Last year, Irina Bokova, Director General of UNESCO, inaugurated the lecture series here at the United Nations. We are fortunate today to have the benefit of the perspective of Dr. Mo Ibrahim. I would like to thank our colleagues at ECOSOC for co-sponsoring this event, the Vice President of ECOSOC and Croatia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Vladimir Drobnjak, is with us, and I am pleased to invite him to speak at this time. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure being with you tonight, Excellencies and distinguished guests. First, I would like to thank the Foreign Policy Association and the IDP Foundation for hosting this event. It's a true privilege being here this evening. This lecture on the challenges of social and economic development could not have been more timely. Since 2012, the United Nations has increased its engagement with civil society to ensure that post-2015 agenda reflects the priorities and concerns of those who it is designed to serve. With the progress made by Millennium Development Goals and learning from their shortcomings, the post-2015 development agenda will reflect the growing recognition that social and economic development and poverty eradication can only be achieved within a sustainable environment. We have been working hard to merge the outcomes of Rio 20 Conference on Sustainable Development with the results and lessons learned from the Millennium Development Goals process, in order to create a holistic, inclusive framework which integrates social, economic, and environmental objectives. The post-2015 agenda sets two ambitious tasks for the international community. Firstly, to develop a set of universal goals and commitments for all countries according to their capabilities, while addressing global challenges in a meaningful way. Secondly, to implement these goals, which will require policy coherence and a renewed partnership for development. ECOSOC is in a unique position to facilitate the integration of three pillars of sustainable development in all areas of its work, three pillars being social, economic, and environmental. Building on its experience in monitoring and review, ECOSOC will provide a strong accountability platform and report on progress in the realization of the post-2015 agenda. Finally, ECOSOC has established itself as the UN key body for drawing together relevant stakeholders, and by engaging non-state actors, it will draw on their critical contributions in pursuit of sustainable development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, public forums like this one are an important way to share new ideas and creative experience, leading to a new framework for sustainable development and how it should be implemented. They are also a way of invigorating civil society engagement with the United Nations and strengthening cooperation between ECOSOC and all sectors of society. This is indeed one of the priorities of work of the Council. Exemplifying the growing engagement between civil society and ECOSOC is the IDP Foundation. So I would like to introduce Madam Irene Pritzker. She became a founding member and a president of the IDP Foundation in 2008. As the Foundation's president, she is dedicated to using philanthropic dollars to develop sustainable, replicable, and scalable educational programs for the developing world as an alternative to aid-based models. A good example of how this goal is being pursued in her development of the IDP Rising Schools program a microfinance venture targeting existing but very poor privately operated schools in Ghana in slum and deprived communities. After successful launch, the program is actively scaling up across Ghana. Her hope is to build a sustainable education model that can be replicated throughout the developing world. In 2012, the IDP Foundation was granted special consultative status with ECOSOC, and she has been frequently invited to speak about this innovative micro-enterprise and training approach of the IDP Rising Schools program at events within the United Nations system and many international platforms focused on education. And finally, let me end by saying that given his outstanding achievements, it is very timely and fitting that Dr. Ibrahim should be presented with tonight's award. We are very honored to have such an eminent global leader here this evening. We look forward to hearing Mr. Ibrahim's insights on social and economic development in the post-2015 context, and will value highly his contribution to ECOSOC's ongoing work. Having said that, I now give the floor to Madam Pritzker for a brief introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just, what?
Yeah, that's the one.
Is it? Good evening, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. We welcome Mo Ibrahim here today as a leader in business, sustainable development, and philanthropy. His commitment to innovation, excellence, and inclusion is clearly demonstrated in his distinguished business career and wealth of accomplishments. Among his many achievements, Dr. Ibrahim's founding of Celtel in Africa catalyzed the mobile phone revolution and has made an enormous contribution to social and economic development and the post-2015 agenda. Africa is the fastest growing market for mobile phones in the world, and mobile technology has become an important enabler for implementing and achieving the MDGs, not just on the African continent, but also worldwide. In 2006, Dr. Ibrahim founded the Mo Ibrahim Foundation to support good governance and exceptional leadership in the African continent. Among its many activities is the Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership. This is the richest annually awarded prize in the world, and it recognizes and celebrates African leaders who have developed their countries and lifted people out of poverty and paved the way for sustainable and equitable prosperity. Equally important is the Ibrahim Index of African Governance, which is the most comprehensive collection of quantitative data on transparency, accountability, and governance in Africa. It has clear synergies with the renewed focus of the post-2015 framework on data and evidence-based solutions. And I think it would be very appropriate now to show a short video about the Mo Ibrahim Foundation.
Nothing is as important as ensuring the quality of governance and good leadership in Africa. An African leader is faced with major challenges. How to take his people out of poverty, how to deal with issues of educating many young people, sorting out conflicts, dealing with health issues, water, electricity. Their success is crucial. It's crucial for the lives of millions of people in Africa.
Leadership is important everywhere, but especially so in Africa. The tasks facing leaders in Africa are challenging, and the lives and well-beings of many millions of people depend upon the performance of those leaders. It follows that we should strive to recognize and reward those successful leaders who are able to deliver tangible results for their citizens.
Mo Ibrahim has established the Mo Ibrahim Foundation to develop criteria for good governance, stimulate a public debate, and challenge the continent's leaders to set the global benchmark on this issue.
The index is an attempt by our foundation to measure and quantify the elements of that basket of political goods each government needs to deliver to its citizens. We're not talking about political programs, about intentions, good or bad, or party manifestos. We're talking about a measure of what is being achieved on the ground. That is the index.
Everybody clap your hands. Setori ni set si sa heloi ni set si sa yofo.
And it is really wonderful to see so many friends around here today. It warms my heart.
I wish at the outset to express my sincere and profound thanks to the Prize Committee of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation for awarding me the first Mo Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership.
We are proud to be the Foundation's honorary laureate, and we accept it on behalf of all of those across the continent.
I'm honored and humbled by the bestowal upon me of such a prestigious award.
The Prize Committee believes that President Pedro Verona Perez is a worthy winner of the 2011 Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I think you had too much fun. It's time to do some work.
You got to talk to someone someday. 'Cause when the words are gone, it's too late. You got to talk to someone someday. 'Cause when the words are gone, it's too late. Communication with thee, put the antenna there. I am a function of thee, speaking loud and clear. Come on, oh you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, before we hear his remarks, I'm delighted to be asked to present Dr. Ibrahim with the FPA Medal, the Foreign Policy Association Medal. This special honor recognizes individuals who demonstrate responsible internationalism and work to expand public knowledge of international affairs. There is nobody more deserving of receiving this honor than Dr. Ibrahim, who in 2008 was listed by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. So, Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's time for me to sing.
I think so.
Let me start by expressing my thanks and gratitude to Irene and to the Foreign Policy Association for this honor. I will value this. And I will also want to extend my thanks for ECOSOC to hosting us here today. It's really wonderful. And I am not used to speak sitting down, actually. It is very comfy seats here and very conducive to sleep. Maybe that's why, you know, United Nations doesn't do much work. But I'll try to do my best. And so, ladies and gentlemen, honors reserved. Thank you very much for coming here tonight to join us in this conversation about the post-2015 agenda, development agenda. Let me start by saying that adopting the MDG in 2000 was really a great innovation, because for the first time, the international community agreed a set of defined, clear targets. And then they set the clock for a defined time limit, timeline. That's the first time this happens. And nothing like clear objectives and time limits focuses everybody's really in doing the job. That was a great innovation, and it was really wonderful. Since then, hundreds of millions of people have been taken out of extreme poverty. Significant progress has been made in the area of health, education, gender, etc. It has not been perfect, but it has been a success, a great success in my view, and that was really wonderful. Now it is time for us to build on that success and to look forward. Having learned whatever lessons from the past 15 years, we need to look now forward what we can do for the post-MDG, post-2015 agenda. Now, let me start with that wonderful report produced by the high-level panel of eminent persons panel, which was convened by the Secretary General. That was really a very thoughtful report. And I enjoyed very much reading that report. I don't know if you have read that report. If you don't, please read it. It is a very good report, very thoughtful. And that panel really consulted widely with civil society and non-state actors, etc. And they came with some interesting remarks. The first one was we should build on what we have done before. We don't throw away, and we have achieved something. Let us build on that. But then they added some new interesting dimensions. The first dimension was added is that integral look at the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of development. because all these are really related. And you take carbon emission, climate change, degradation of oceans and soil, all this impact mainly the poor people actually. And we cannot talk about development in absence of really talking about climate change and what's happening around us. So this integral look at all these issues, I think, was a wonderful concept which we really should follow on. But that also changes the game a little bit because it poses a universal challenge for all of us, because we are all now involved in this. The second important dimension introduced by the panel is that of peace, good governance, and rule of law, and accountable institutions as basis for development. That was missing really in the first set of MDGs. Good governance is really the heart of all political goods that we expect. That's why our foundation is just really focused on that. Let us first look at peace. I wish to remind you of the World Bank Development Report of 2012, which I was honored to be involved with. And that report actually built a comprehensive case on how conflicts undermine development and how the lack of development in both conflict countries, or what we call fragile states, does sow the seeds for further conflicts. It is a vicious circle. And I come from Sudan, and if anybody needs a case study on how conflicts undermine developments, you are welcome to my country. So peace is important. In absence of peace, there is no development. And we need really to understand that, how to deal with conflicts. But in order to build peaceful and conflict-free society, we need good governance. That's why peace is really linked with good governance, which means rule of law, institutions, and equitable participation by the citizens in the social, economic, and political life in their country, regardless of ethnicity, race, gender, or religion. This is what produces conflicts and tensions in the fabric of society. So really governance at the end is also measurable. And as demonstrated by our annual index of African governance, I think you have seen some sketches here about how we go around doing this. We measure governance in Africa. Basically, we monitor delivery for the four main pillars of good governance. These pillars of good governance are sustainable economic development, sustainable economic development, rule of law and safety of citizens, human development, and participation and human rights. These are the four corners really where the good governance rests. And we publish this information and this data about Africa every year. And if we can do that in Africa, I don't know why we cannot do that elsewhere. We really need a scorecard because governance is measurable and should be measured and should hold everybody accountable to good governance, because that is essential. Again, talking about rule of law, some interesting reading of the UN Commission on the Legal Empowerment of the Poor. They call it CLAP. People love these abbreviations. And that report estimated that 4 billion people live outside the protection of the law. That's half the population of the world live outside the protection of law. Why? They may lack a legal identity, or they are unable to access legal advice, or they are unable to enforce the law. People without legal identity are denied basic services or economic opportunities. They cannot open a bank account, obtain a loan or credit. There's no medical records for them. They cannot obtain a driving license or even a mobile phone. Without legal identity, you cannot secure land rights. Poor peasants cannot really secure the land rights and they get the lands taken away. They cannot access basic state services. So just a simple thing, a legal identity to prove who you are, such a basic thing is denied for billions of people. How can we talk about rule of law? We can have the most wonderful laws, and we can have very honest and great independent judiciary, but you can still deny justice to billions of people simply because they are legally do not exist. Now, there's no magic about this. India established a universal identity scheme to cover all of 1.2 billion people in India. It was launched in September 2010. By the end of 2013, they have issued a total of 580 million unique identification numbers. 580 million in almost 2 years. Identity numbers were issued. Anybody wants one, because it's not mandatory, but anyone who wants a legal identity can go to the intake office, has his fingerprints and iris scanned, exactly what happened to me yesterday when I came through the airport here. Still, they will not let me in, but anyway. So every individual will receive a 12-digit ID number linked to their biometric data, clear proof of each person. India has demonstrated that can be done. And the beauty of this, actually, not only is cheap, actually it saved the country a lot of money. That's why Indians are doing it, because there's a huge waste in country resources, in subsidies given to the poor, where actually it doesn't go to the poor, and you have all kind of ghost people receiving the money, a lot of intermediary, a lot of corruption in the system. So this scheme is actually paying for itself and saving money. Why can't we do that everywhere? Just to get legal identity for people that help to protect their rights and help enforce rule of law. Small steps like this can really produce important results. Another dimension which was raised actually in the high-level panel report concerning the area of measurement, the importance of measuring outcomes. And really, we need to know where we are going, and at what rate. Without statistical data, we cannot do that. And the lack of statistical data in developing countries is alarming. I'll give you an example. We claim that we managed to meet the first target of the MDG, which is halving the number of people in extreme poverty. The fact is that we can only claim that because China managed to lift few 100 million people out of poverty. So we made the numbers, the global numbers. But the reality, actually, in a place like Africa, we don't know. Simply, there is no reliable data on poverty in Africa. We don't know. So if we don't know what exactly are we trying to achieve, we don't know when we're starting, we don't know where we're ending, we don't know what is the rate of progress. And it's really amazing. I mean, you cannot drive a car without instruments. You need to know what is speed, where you're going right or going left, or you cannot fly a plane without instruments and data. How can you run a country without data? How can all this development community worldwide commit all these resources without knowing where it's going, what outcome happened, you know, what is the outcome of what we're doing? It's very important, really, to do that. And we, as I said, we do this index for Africa, and we know the difficulty of how to get this data. So we really need to strengthen the statistical offices in Africa and in many other developing countries. I know this is not as sexy as building a hospital or building a school. It sounds great and sexy and it makes good television and stuff like that. Statistical offices are boring because emotionally we cannot relate to them. But really, it is statistical offices which will enable us to build more hospitals and more schools in an efficient way where it is needed and really produce the outcome we hope for. So we need really to box clever here, to do things cleverly and understand the importance of accurate data really in pushing the development agenda. I think we also need to develop a coalition around world stats. World stats is a term which was coined by the Commission for Future Generation, which is based in Oxford University and was chaired by Pascal Lamy. And I also was honored to be a member of the commission. You can download the reports from the Oxford University website. But the idea was that we need to have a body, preferably NGO, small NGO, sort of a structure, which will raise a profile of trustworthy statistics, lobby for improved standards and greater resources. We need a watchdog that flag failure to adhere to the United Nations fundamental principles of the official statistics. We have a wonderful commission here which produce the fundamental, but what about compliance? What people are doing? We need that independent body out of politics, which is run by civil society, which will be the watchdog really to watch compliance with these principles. And it should also encourage innovation and a need to interact with business. Because guess what? Some of the data actually collected as a byproduct of running a project can be more useful than surveys. There is huge technological advantage now on crowdsourcing and other things which need to be harnessed to enhance our really understanding of what exactly is happening around us. So we need that agility, this innovation and technology to be used in order to produce that world-class statistical data, because using that, we can really drive the development agenda in the most effective way. Finally, whatever final text comes out next year, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of haggling and horse trading and until we agree the final draft of the post-MDG agenda. But it's clear what we need now is to build a global alliance around that agenda. This we cannot just leave to states and development agencies to run. We need to bring people, we need to bring business, we need to bring NGOs, we need academics. We really need that mobilization of everybody around these targets, because it's not enough to leave it only to the government. It's something far more important to leave only to governments. So we need just all those people. We need you, me, and everybody to help deliver a better world for your children and mine. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Ibrahim, thank you very much for your insights and recommendations. Dr. Ibrahim has indicated that he is willing to take questions. If you would please raise your hand, and you can use the microphone directly in front of you once you're recognized. So we open it up for questions. Sir.
I noted that in your remarks that you indicate that rule of law is very important for economic development. And you also mentioned that a huge percentage of the achievement of the MDG goals has come from China. And there's a huge debate right now about the future of the rule of law in China. And how would you reconcile all of these achievements and what some people believe is inadequate rule of law, especially for the future in China?
Well, actually, the two issues were mentioned in two separate parts of my discussion. I mentioned China in the context of the number of people taken out of poverty. There is no doubt that China has taken hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. And I raise that issue because I say we got scot-free because we don't know what happened elsewhere. We just know what happened in China. That's where I mentioned China. I spoke about rule of law as very important in another part here. I'm not here to comment on the rule of law in China or in the United States. I'm really talking about the principles and the issues. So whether we agree we like China or not, the fact is China did something about poverty, and that's great.
There.
Corruption in I commend you for the carrot of reducing corruption through your prize. Can you give us some comments on your views on the stick? How do you stop the corruption that is rife in these governments when the carrots don't work?
Let me just correct part of your statement. We don't offer the prize as a carrot. Okay, the prize is $5 million and $200,000 for life. If you are a corrupt leader, this is peanuts. So it cannot be a carrot. Let me explain what we're exactly doing. If you are a decent African leader, came to office, did your job, and left office. Unlike Western leaders, you cannot join the board of JP Morgan or whoever. That's where your leaders here in Europe and the United States end up, the boards of big companies, etc. You can write your memoirs and you get lots of money for your memoir. There is a lot of things you can do. You don't have a problem having a decent life. If you have African president, it's going to be a struggle for you after office. And you'll have to go and teach at a university or somewhere, etc. We think those people, being an excellent leader, actually are too valuable resource for us to let them go and just teach at one institute, which is great. What we want to tell them, look, don't worry about earning a living. You have a reasonable standard of life, we'll guarantee you, but we want you now to devote all your time to going around Africa now, speaking to kids, explaining to them what does it mean to be a leader? What is good leadership? What is your journey? We need you to inspire our young people. We have been suffocated with so many stories about our corrupt leaders, how terrible, crazy kind of guys we had. You know, we know everybody in Africa knows about Idi Amin and all those guys. But nobody in Africa knows about decent African leaders like Chissano or like Mokhai or those guys you show in the video. Nobody knows those guys. Those have been wonderful leaders. And it's time now to bring those guys out to show our kids who have role models. It's important for us to get them here in the United States or in Europe so can tell our friends here, look, not all African leaders are thieves. We have decent African leaders who have done the job and done a great job, actually. So they become ambassadors to Africa. And so that's the whole idea of offering this. It is an honor and to continue public service. That's important. So that is to deal with the issue of the prize, whether it is a carrot or what, or a stick or whatever. Of course, it's also in a way, actually, it is a stick, because if you don't win the prize after you leave office, people, of course, going to ask why you didn't win. So it's a kind of a stick, maybe, more than a kind of a carrot. As for the issue of corruption, corruption is a global problem. It's not an African problem. For every corrupt official, there are 24 at least corrupt business people who are populating this wonderful city here. Yeah? Because politicians don't bribe themselves. Who bribes them? Who is a partner? Yeah? And for a long time, they just got away with it. We just focused on corrupt political leaders. We did not focus also or shed the light on their partnership in the crime, because bribery is a crime. And it's very interesting to note that it's, I think, in 1984 when the United States introduced the Foreign Corruption Act. So it's about 30 years ago or something like that. Europe introduced that only 12 years ago, in the 2000. Before that, in the year 1999, 15 years ago, corruption, bribery was legal, not only legal, but tax deductible. Okay? So look at the double standards we have here. And it's really time for the international community now to really appreciate that corruption is a complex problem, and we need to deal with it at all aspects of it. I mean, we welcome the United States action, for example, to enforce transparency on contracts in the extractive and energy industries. Dodd-Frank, that was wonderful. Europe followed through, and that was great. So there's some progress. David Cameron in Britain led G7, was it G8 maybe last year before they kick Russia out. I don't know what they call it. Sometimes they call it G7, sometimes G8, whatever it is. But they really first time start to talk about transparency and trust ownerships and taxation. Multinationals don't pay taxes in Africa. It's legal. They have wonderful lawyers. And, well, actually, they do it also in Britain. They don't pay taxes in Britain, actually, as our British friend discovered last year, and it's all legal. And we need really to cooperate in that area to really close all these silly loopholes, to have a more... You see, the problem is business have gone global, while governments still act in isolation in little silos. And multinational companies just play the game. So if I book all my sales in a leafy island somewhere or offshore account, then I don't pay taxes. And what we discovered is these offshore islands are not necessarily lined up with palm trees. I mean, they exist in the heart of the city of London and in the city of Delaware, and you know, they are not really all exotic islands. So we really need to clean up our acts, all of us.
Thank you. Ma'am? Over here.
I'm the president of the Global Alliance for Preventive Wings in the Military. It's a non-profit organization. And you, sir, mentioned the importance of statistics in going forward in achieving sustainable development. And the entire focus of my organization is on going through statistical research data on the phenomenon which was used by President Chissano in Mozambique. This phenomenon was proven statistically. It was a technology which consisted in inducing coherent functioning of the population, and the only way you could see that was through statistical data. And President Chissano used the statistical data, and we are, as the organization, we are bringing this forward to look at this, because this technology can be replicated. And my question to you is, would you support repeating the experiment with this technology, confirmed statistically, with the Scientific Advisory Board reporting this? And if the result is the same as it was before Mozambique and in Mozambique, then it could be repeated in other countries. So, and it's the phenomenon which you use in the country, and then statistically there is a proven situation that it works, and this synchronized functioning of the population shows that every single aspect of the functioning is improving. It's the synchrony. And I'm working on repeating this phenomenon anywhere in other countries, because it was done only in Mozambique on the basis of 25 years research before. And right now it's enough to repeat this, gather the data, and if it works again, then it could be a supportive model to everything that is suggested normally in every single country in Africa and in basically everywhere in the world. It was, in my opinion, when you look at statistics, it was a very important ingredient in President Chissano's inaugural award, because everything in the country improved.
Ma'am,
So
let Dr. Ibrahim respond
that would be
or react, if you would
sure,
like to.
I missed what's the question.
It's a model in Mozambique that you think could be replicated elsewhere in the world for gathering statistics?
And
maybe you can just provide Dr. Ibrahim more information.
Yeah,
about that.
I mean, of course, we need to learn from each other. And if you're able to produce a new model for us, technology is offering a lot of opportunities for all of us to learn from each other. We need to find a forum where all these things are absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah. Thank you.
Let's go to this side of the room. Ma'am, if you could keep it to a question, because we don't have much time left.
Absolutely. Dr. Ibrahim, thank you so much for your remarks. I'm with the State University of New York, and I'm very honored to be with a group of 20 young women who are pursuing careers in international relations and global affairs, was wondering if you could expand on your comments about how we could raise up a new generation of leadership and maybe what they might have opportunities in Africa to pursue their careers. Thank you.
If we can, sorry?
How we can encourage a new generation of leaders, and particularly in Africa.
I think by focusing the spotlight on the issue of leadership and governance. When we publish our index every year, there is a big debate going on about what's happening in each country and why. When we announce the prize, where some years we did not give a prize, there's no winner. And whether we find a winner or not, there is a huge debate in Africa at that point of time why there's no winner, or why my president did not get the prize, why this. And we want to really have a conversation. So the whole idea is just to start the conversation about governance. Once people start to talk about governance and leadership, it's fine. They'll find their way. So that's the whole objective, is to start that debate. And people understand governance and leadership touches everybody's life. It's to do with the future of their kids. Then we leave it to them to do it.
Mr. Blissett?
It's been fascinating to listen to you. Could you speak a moment on what you've discovered on the impacts of religion and culture on governance on the continent of Africa, and whether there's anything unique there that has to be taken into account as opposed to elsewhere maybe in the world?
Culture and religion?
And religion.
That's a very complex question. Unfortunately, at the moment, religious intolerance in Africa is causing us a lot of problems. And it's really sad to say that. When all religions call for love, for solidarity, for all highest ideal, we see people using religion as a cover for atrocities and horrible crimes. And what we hope is that we want to see religious leaders standing up really and taking the religion out of the hand of those people who appoint themselves as speakers on behalf of religion. What we need to introduce really very firmly is the concept of citizenship. Regardless of your gender, your ethnicity, your race, your color, your religion, a citizen. What does it mean to be a citizen? And that's something really we need to work on in Africa. And unfortunately, many terrible leaders use race or religion or whatever for their ends. Just look at what's happening everywhere. South Sudan, we saw huge massacres taking place. It's just for political self-glory. I mean, there is no issue between Salva Kiir or Machar. Everyone wants to be a president of the country. And for that, then they use the tribal cars and they end up with tens of thousands of people killed. And what for? It is this issue of governance institution we need to establish is a big fight. And we just have to really continue to do that. Sometimes also we culture can be useful in the battle against all this, what divides us, because hopefully culture can bring us together and we can see humanity in each other, and that transcends our biological differences or religious differences.
Ma'am, over there.
First of all, I would like, of course, to congratulate you, Mo, and thank you so much for the excellent work you are doing. As a member or as a commissioner of the ITU UNESCO Broadband Commission and the person who really led the expansion of access to mobile telephony in Africa, could you comment what is the impact of that technology and the fact that you are giving voice to so many people that just for a couple of years ago didn't have that voice? Do you see what is the impact of that on the governance in Africa right now? Or social media and access to information?
I'll be frank with you. I mean, I have never envisaged when we started our work building mobile phones companies in Africa, we never really had the far sight to predict all these changes and effects on society. I wish I could say that I'm very smart and I designed all this. I didn't. The effect has been huge. Of course, there is the economic and what we added to the GDP. Millions of jobs have been created around the industry, which is quite useful. But the fact that empowering people, I mean, everybody walking around now is a news editor. They can publish their own magazine, is a TV station. They just take videos and recordings and send it around. It suddenly empowered everybody. You know, I remember as a kid in Sudan, we had one TV station, one radio station, and both run by the government. And all our information things we see is what the president had for breakfast, or whom did we see for lunch. This is the kind of nonsense we lived on. This is light of information. Suddenly, a whole new world is created around us, and people became connected. They are able to organize, to communicate with each other, to spread stories. And you see something wrong happening, you just take a picture, and next, you know, before you know, the whole world is looking at this. Is a great and wonderful tool, really, for democracy and to empower civil society. And I think that's probably the rise of civil society in Africa is the main changer. It's not the raw materials. It's not because China needs oil or, you know, no, it is not. It is the rise of the civil society in Africa, which really is changing the plot. And once the genie is out of the bottle, you cannot put it back in. So that's why we say the game is over.
Sir?
Does this work? Does your foundation do any investigative research or reporting on corrupt practices in Africa? For example, BNP Paribas' recent activities in Sudan, but BNP Paribas' most profitable business line is trading oil in corrupt countries in Africa.
We are not investigators, or we are not a law enforcement agency. We are just a civil society which is trying to breach good governance and produce material evidence of the state of governance, etc. But any case come to our attention, provided it's backed by facts, what we use is we use the public forum to raise that issue, and we also embarrass the people, because I attend all the meetings with those with different people. I mean, when we, I mean, I spoke and I wrote about the problem of the Israeli company which took the iron mines in Guinea for peanuts, $130 million, to flip it for $5 billion by paying bribes to the leaders there. We spoke public about that. It's a big issue because we had the information. So if you have any information, please let us know. And what we can do is we speak about it in public. And but I'm not a policeman. I cannot, you know, I have no authority. I'm not an elected official. So all what we can do is just scream our head off.
We are fortunate to have with us Dr. Ibrahim's daughter, Hadil, and I believe you want to make a comment or have a ask a question?
I had a very quick question. I just wanted to repeat the question of the lady from the State University of New York and her group of wonderful young women leaders. You talk a lot about the next generation, creating a next generation of leaders, but what advice do you actually have for that generation, and in particular for young women leaders that can help them as they try to do great things?
Well, I don't know what advice I can give. I mean, let me say something here. I hate the idea of men telling women what to do. Really. You guys know what to do.
Well, we'll leave it at that. I think we have a question on this side. Yes, sir.
Can you speak in the mic? Okay.
Yeah.
You are running foundation fighting the terrible crime, human trafficking, child trafficking, slavery, sex slavery of the child. We are financing agency which fighting the crime. I am agent myself. I've been kidnapped for this case. And my question to you, you have any blueprints how to stop the corruption which trigger this terrible crime? You have any blueprints how we are stopping government corruption to inform us about the terrible crime? Please, I will appreciate if you tell me this.
Yeah, that's very important, the issue of slavery. And we have a friend, Andrew Forrest, and actually is a colleague of his here, Raza Jafar, who launched a foundation to fight slavery last year. I don't know if you have seen, they started to produce the slavery index. Did you come across the slavery index? And we did work with Andrew, and because we have the know-how about producing global indices, so they came and they met to work with our research people and helped them in producing this index for slavery. So we cooperate with people doing that. So it's not like our focus, because every foundation has a focus, but we'll all cooperate always with each other. Any know-how we have is under your disposal and under enables. You know, we need thousands of of NGOs and foundations to deal with all these intricate problems we have, and we need to work together. Thanks.
We have a young lady up there.
Hello, Dr. Mohammed. Excuse me, Dr. Ibrahim. Thank you so much for tonight's lecture. I have a quick question. You mentioned NGOs often. NGOs play a large role in civil society and are crucial to connecting people to the appropriate resources, lobbying, and educating local communities. However, there are no international standards for the quality of NGOs needed to effectively carry out the mission of the MDGs. Besides the consultative status the United Nations offers NGOs, how can NGOs be held to a higher standard and be more effective? Do you believe a concrete international standard for NGOs would enhance governance?
I really love what you say, and I think it is ridiculous that we, as NGO and civil society organization, we hold everybody accountable and we kick a fuss about how everybody is behaving. At the same time, we're not looking at what ourselves we are doing, and there's no proper audit of how we as civil society organizations are working. And that's something I think we started conversation with we're starting with the major NGO, and we start to raise the question, is it time now to start to create a system of audit? And I think we speaking to Civicus and various organizations, but you're absolutely right. we also need to be held up to the standards which we are trying to hold everybody to. Absolutely.
Question over here.
Dr. Ibrahim, what has been, if any, the impact of the massive increase in Chinese development and investment in sub-Saharan Africa on the practices of good governance or corruptive practices within the governments that China is investing in?
Yeah, I was waiting for this question. I never come to US or Europe without people asking about China. For us, China is just another trading partner. Our trade with China increased vastly over the last 15 years. China's trade with Africa now stands at about $200 billion, while the United States trade with us is about $110 million. 15 years ago, it was the other way around. Well, I mean, we are happy to trade with everybody or to work with everybody. The more trading partners and the more competition we have for our resources, the better market price we can get for our products or whatever. That's of course. We don't have any ideological issues or reasons to trade with X and not Y or Z. It's just business. Of course, Chinese need to be held to the same standards which we should hold everybody to. And we always said that Chinese need to start from where Western companies ended, not from where they started. And that's really important. So everybody should be held accountable. And there is serious conversation going on with the Chinese, and there is a big pushback about some practices which are not helpful. So while on one hand we welcome the trade with China, and there's nothing wrong with that, we don't need to apologize for it. I mean, if you walk into Walmart here, all the stuff here is Chinese actually, yeah? US is the largest trading partner of China. So, I mean, you cannot complain that we dealing with China or anybody else, but we encourage American business to be a little bit more active and get involved in China. I mean, Africa is no longer a low-hanging fruit, so it needs work, it needs people to go on and do business there. I'm very pleased that the American government is holding a meeting in August. I think we're starting to get some engagement with the administration and the business community here. I hope it will continue.
Dr. Ibrahim, on behalf of the Foreign Policy Association, the IDP Foundation, and ECOSOC, thank you for gracing our forum.